Hi, Peter Charles here, and what's the right street lens for you? Can I answer that question? No, I don't have a clue. But I might be able to provide some guidelines or some criteria that you can use based on the fact I went through a lot of nonsense trying to figure out what was the best lens for me. Okay, one of the problems, of course, is what's street photography? What does that mean to you? What kind of street photography do you do? Do you include a street in a picture and call it street photography? Do you get right up close to your subjects? Do you stand back? Do you do cityscapes? Whatever. They're all can be considered street photography, and they'd all, use all of these lenses that I have here. Or, you might use something like this with a zoom. Lots of range in the term street photography right off the bat. And then there's our personal style and how that fits into how we use the camera and the lenses and how we go about our street photography. That's a part of our personality. So I thought, let's deal with these Voigtländer lenses. And for the record, I have no affiliation with Voigtländer. I just happen to like their products. I have to pay full price for all of these. But I think for a lot of the street photography we do, this is the sort of type of product that you should be using opposed to autofocus lenses. So let's talk about that, autofocus versus manual focus. That was my big conundrum. I started street photography in the 1980s, in film obviously, and I got out of it, and then around 2012 I got my Fujifilm X-E1 and jumped back in with the 35 f1.4, trying to shoot in autofocus. And my results were, at the best, iffy. And I had a problem adapting autofocus to my shooting style. I got the 27mm and it wasn't any better. And then I found a used 21mm f4 Voigtländer M-Mount lens, which I then went through a bunch of adapters, finally spending the money on the Fujifilm adapter, which worked well. Loved the lens, except it was too wide. So when I saw a used 25mm hanging around, I swapped the 21 for the 25, and then later got a 40 to accompany it, and I put it on my X Pro 1, and I had a great time with it. Great fit. Did a lot of good street photos with that. And then I got an X100T, and later an X100V, and again experimented going back to autofocus, which didn't work very well. And I ended up using those lenses either on back button focus or most of the time on manual focus, using zone focusing techniques. Now, if you're using an autofocus lens with zone focusing, right off the bat, you've got a problem. You have a fly-by-wire focusing ring, which usually is not the best in terms of feel. There's no distance scale with it. Many lenses have no aperture rings. You can't really zone focus very well when you don't have these markings. Yes, you can do it in the viewfinder, but it's a fiddle. And the big problem is you can't easily tell if you have the depth of field and if you've moved the lens. So for example, if we look at this lens here, I've got my depth of field scale, I've got my distance scale, I've got my aperture ring. I can just look at it and know that my zone focus is correct. I don't have to look at the viewfinder, turn the camera on, look at the viewfinder, wiggle some things to get it where I need it to be. The lens is very easy to see, and that's probably one of the most compelling reasons why I go with a lens like this, is that I can just look down at my camera and know that nothing has moved, nothing has changed, especially since all of the controls are nice and firm. With some of the other lenses I've used with the fly-by-wire focusing rings, they can be very, very easy to move, very sloppy. In fact, on my X100T, I had to put a rubber band on it to keep it from moving. So the first thing I would say is settle on, does your style adapt to autofocus or manual focus? The next thing is about speed of your work. I go fast with street photography because I'm taking pictures of people in fleeting moments. And one of the most annoying things I had with, all autofocus was the delay between pushing the button and having something happen, especially with the old XE1 with that 35 f1.4. And the other thing is the half press. You get the camera, with the focusing point on the subject, make the half press, get the autofocus to go, push the button. That's how I work when I'm going around shooting all sorts of different kinds of pictures, but not for street. For street, I'll operate like I'm an old film guy. I'm just whacking that shutter button. I'm working very quickly, and a lot of times with autofocus, the camera did not react fast enough. Yes, I know about back button focusing. I know about focus priority and release priority. None of that helped. If you're working fast and you whack that button fast, you may get some weird results with autofocus lenses because they may not completely focus by the time you've shot the frame. Or they focused, but what you were trying to capture is now gone. An expression, for example. A perfect example, I've got a picture I'll put up of a couple eating sandwiches or buns, whatever. And the woman tried to, offer a bite to her man, and his initial reaction was to jerk back because it surprised him. He didn't know what was coming at him, and then he, realized it was just a sandwich, and he took a bite. I was using my X100T on autofocus. I pushed the button. The autofocus whirred and buzzed, and then when I got the shot, his face had already composed. So that initial surprise, which would have been a great shot, was gone. It was gone in like a fraction of a second. And the autofocus was slow enough that I was not able to get that shot. So for me, I don't want to work in autofocus on the street. I will in any other form of photography, but not on the street. I need that instant response from the camera. So when you're using mechanical shutter with manual focus lens, you're not, and everything's on manual focus, you don't have to worry about that lag. For the autofocus kicking in, you can just press a button instantly and you've got your shot, just like a film camera, just as fast as a film camera. So as far as the focal lengths are concerned, if we start with 50, funny enough, I did quite well. Probably the best I've ever done with autofocus was with the Fujifilm f250. Because of the style of photography I did with that lens, style of street photography, I was more deliberate. So I had the time to bring the camera to my eye, compose the shot, get the focus point right, hit the button, and I got the shot. So I got some rather good shots out of that 50 f2 on autofocus. But this is a manual focus lens. The zone focusing for this is narrow because it's a 50. And it takes a bit of time to manually focus. And I find that I don't use this for street. I use it for a lot of other things, but I don't use it for street. At the other end is the 18. Lovely little lens, nice and small. Great. Love a little lens like this. It's perfect for street photography, except I don't like really wide angles for street photography because I don't get right in people's face. So if you're the type who gets right in somebody's face, the 18 will be lovely for you. If you're the type of person who likes to do more of the street and less of the people, so you get a sort of a wide vista type shot with a person in it, well, this would be a great lens as well, but it doesn't work for me. So those are two out. So these are the three I end up using the most, and the 27 is on the camera, so that tells you, that's the main one. But I will use the 23 and I will use the 35. The only thing I will say about the Voigtländers in this case is they're f1.2, whereas the 27 is a f2. Because of that, they're probably bigger and heavier and more expensive than they need to be. They could have been f2 lenses and they would be fine for street photography. You don't need a fast lens for street unless you're doing a lot of nighttime stuff. So that's basically my kit for street photography, and most of the time I'm just using this. And I've gone away from the X100 simply because, it's not set up for manual use. You can do it. Yeah, I've done it. I've done thousands of photos on manual with the X100T and X100V, but it's not convenient for manual photography. This is. Just the way this sets up, it's perfect. So that's what I'm primarily using, the 27 Voigtländer on my X Pro 3. You could use it on a smaller camera. XE4 would be really cool. I think that would be a great combination. And just remember that when you're setting this up and deciding, what am I going to buy? What am I going to use? It basically boils down to, do you want to go manual focus or autofocus? And if you're doing autofocus, does your style match the way autofocus works? You've got that little lag. You've got to make sure the focus point is on the person that you want. If your style is conducive to that, you don't need these. But if you want to work fast and you want to be, discreet, you're not attracting attention to yourself, you're working quickly, you may not even bring the camera up to your eye. I do a lot of shots like this. I frame quite well doing that. So then manual lenses are fantastic. You just look down, you can see your depth of field, you can see your, where you're focused. You don't even have to bring it to your eye to get a focus. So, depends on your style, depends on what you like to take photos of. Depends on these things most of all, that, what are you comfortable with? Your speed of operation. Do you go really fast? Do you take your time? Like I said, 50mm f2 Fujifilm, I took my time. And I don't find I'm that productive with this lens compared to that autofocus 50, because I was taking my time with the 50. The wider lenses, I'm moving faster. I need the manual focus. Otherwise they're too slow. So that's basically what I do for picking lenses, and it's taken me close to 12 years. Well, 10, let's say. 10 years to settle on this. And this turned out to be the perfect fit for me. So give that some thought. Cheers.